Could you address the question of making contact with the inner being? Because I understand the state of meditation leading to a numbness, and that leading to an experience of movement in the body.
We teach meditation because it's easier to teach you to quiet your mind and have no thought than it is to teach you to have pure positive thought. In other words, we could teach most of you how to focus upon a sound. Esther meditated this morning and listened to the sound in the air conditioning unit. And then she listened to the sound of an airplane getting ready to take off. And then she listened to the sound of an airplane taking off. And then she realized that any sound she focused upon was enough for her to put her brain on pause and raise her vibration. In other words, that's the whole point of meditation, is to quiet your mind. When you are in a state of appreciation, you are in vibrational alignment with your source energy. And this connection that you're talking about, this alignment, is just about vibrational frequencies. So if you're not doing something that causes you to have a lower vibrational frequency, you will naturally attune to the higher natural vibrational frequency that is the signal that your source is always sending. In other words, love is the way the signal feels. When you're hating, you're not on the signal. When you're frustrated, you're not on the signal. Appreciation is the way the signal feels when you attune to it. Last night, a friend brought something to Jerry and Esther to read, a beautiful paragraph about the subject of death from the perspective of someone who had already made their transition, who was pointing out there is no separation between that which you are and that which I am. In other words, our relationship continues to be. And as Esther read the words aloud, her body rippled with joyful acknowledgement. In other words, those words and Esther's focus upon them caused her to vibrate in perfect concert with that which we are, so that the way we felt as she read the words was felt by her. So just know that when you feel wonderful, you're connected. And we know, it seems like we make a big thing about it as we say, this is the process for opening your passageway, as if you could ever close it. You can't. This is the process where you open your valve and allow communication, as if you could ever close your valve so much that you could shut off communication. But you can get so ornery about things that you're in a different vibrational atmosphere, so to speak, so that you can't hear the message. And what we're wanting you to realize is that, as we said earlier, contrast causes the launching of the rocket of desire, and source becomes that idea immediately and then forevermore calls you toward it. And the sound, what does it sound like? What is the call of source? Surely it must be harps. But the sound of source from wherever you are. Jerry and Esther notice that they hear very different sounds. Just thinking in terms of the vibration that you call sound. They hear different sounds. Do you ever watch your dog? Your dog hears different things than you hear. And so what is the actual sound of source? Well, you have to tune yourself to it before you can hear it in its pureness. When Esther tunes into it, she feels the ripples in her body that feel like ecstasy. But if she's ornery, the sound of source feels like ornery. In other words, if Esther's depressed, source feels like anger to her. If Esther feels not free, or like she can't make something happen that she needs to happen, she's got some limitation of time or something, when she feels that despair, of that lack of freedom, the sound of source sounds like anger to her. Does to all of you. Yeah. But then your friends take you to those anger management seminars as if there's something wrong with it. And if Esther is frustrated, we don't call her toward anger. We only call her toward anger if it's between where she is and where we are. You see, and so source is always calling you to where source is and to that which you have become. In the name of source, really, that's really what's happening. So this passageway, we've talked about it in a lot of different ways over time. At first we talked to you about there's the physical you and then there's the inner being you, because we wanted you to acknowledge that there was another way of looking at you. But even in acknowledging those two components, it sort of serves to separate you. When There is the you that was born into this physical body, and to the degree that you stay joyful, you remain that non-physical you. And every day of life is about finding a way. This workshop is called The Art of Allowing. It's all about closing that gap. It's all about opening that passageway. It's all about allowing yourself to be who you really are. So, in meditation, most of you, when you sit in meditation, are not really up to speed with who you really are because you're dealing with the contrast of your environment. Now, that's not fair to say that that's always the case, but often when you meditate because you think you should. Esther sits to meditate before a seminar like this because she wants to make very sure that she's up to speed with that which we are before she stands before you and you summon us through her. In other words, she knows if she's not up to speed, you can still summon us, but her body takes a beating. And that's true of all of you. Your body takes a beating when you're not up to speed with who you really are. And so meditation is a tool where you quiet your mind, and when you stop thought, you stop resistance, and when you stop resistance, your natural vibration dominates. In fact, Esther will often say to us when she's sitting to meditate or even standing here getting ready to allow us through, she will say, Abraham, I want the vibration that is you to dominate my being at this time. In other words, I want your vibration to be what is presented here, you see. And when you think about it, feeling good is always about that. That's what tuned in, tapped in, turned on is. That's what in the zone is. That's what the basketball player is when he's at his best. That's what the musician is when he's at its best. That's what the painter is when he's at its best. And so let's not make it sound like it is something freaky or weird or different. It's who you really are and that which you intended to experience. You didn't say, I'll go into a physical body, pinch myself off from who I really am, and then see how it works out. You said, I'll go forth, I'll keep my passageway open, and I will, in this expanded form, enjoy this life immensely, you see. So, the first thing that happens once you actually quiet your mind, and for some of you it's a new experience. It was for Jerry and Esther. They had never meditated. They had carefully avoided meditating and anyone who did. Because to them it just felt like weirdness. It felt like poverty. It felt like laying on beds of nails. It sounded like walking on hot coals. It sounded like standing at the airport on one foot with your hand out. Oming. In other words, the word meditation meant weirdness to Jerry and Esther, and they were not about to meditate until, through the path of least resistance, someone suggested it. And even as they sat the first time to meditate, they were embarrassed to do it because it just felt strange. So they sat in wingback chairs with an etagere between them. Esther remembers sitting up really straight so that Jerry could not see her if he tried. And she focused upon her breathing, counting her breaths. And as she distracted herself from the reality that was so active and focused upon a less active reality, which was just the breathing of her body, right away she felt that numbness. And then she was sort of hooked because she knew that whatever it was she was feeling was divine in some way. She could feel the rightness of it, the goodness of it, you see. So she said, let's do it again. Jerry laughed because that's how Esther is, all or nothing with Esther. And so they set the timer again. She meditated for another 15 minutes. And again, this intense distraction. She could not feel her nose from her foot. In other words, she could feel that she was consciousness, but it felt as if she was suspended from everything that was physical. Well, the reason that happened so quickly with Esther is because they had just come from a 30 or 40 minute session with someone who was really tuned into the energy stream. And as Jerry and Esther had sat in an environment like that, as you are here, they had, without even knowing it through listening to the words, attuned to the energy of that vibration. So Esther was not far from the vibration that is us, comparatively speaking. And so as she sat with the intention to quiet her mind, she received enough of a different experience that it let her know that there was a vibrational world that was formerly not known to her that was lovely to be intertwined with because she could feel the love within it. She said to Jerry, When she came out of it, her teeth buzzed for nearly an hour. She could feel that something extraordinary had happened. And whatever it was, she could not explain it. She could not define it, but she wanted more of it. And so they sat every day. They did not miss a day to meditate for 15 or 20 minutes. And on each of those days, nothing happened except that Esther got numb and she liked the sensation of the detachment. It felt like love to her. And then she began to receive movement. Now, what you are talking about, the first thing that begins to happen is you begin to feel some sort of twitches and itches in your body. What that is the energy moving through you. It is the energy of source beginning to dominate the vibration of your being. So any vibration that you've got going on because you're mad at somebody or you're worried about something or you're afraid of something, any of those vibrations cannot abide in the vibration that is beginning to be dominated by source energy. So those twitches and itches that you feel are that energy as it's beginning to morph into the higher vibration. So the sensation of twitches and itches is the sensation of your body leaving resistance behind. Once you begin to feel that, consciously acknowledge that it is a good thing and then try not to focus upon it. In other words, just acknowledge that it's happening and say the words in your mind briefly. Don't get focused in a big way. The words, I am willing to allow this connection. In other words, that feeling of willingness goes a long way in helping that resistance to leave you. And once those twitches and itches begin to subside, and we're talking about over a period of day after day after day after day. On one day you might feel a lot of them, on the next day not so many, and on the next day not so many, until eventually the twitches and itches are not part of your physical experience during meditation. Usually about then, you begin getting movement sensations. You'll find yourself actually having the sensation or the impulse yes. to move. The impulse to yawn is not different from that. Do you know that? The impulse to yawn is a request on a cellular level for oxygen, and the impulse is received by non-physical, and it is the non-physical part of you that is sending that signal. And in the same way that you cannot stifle a yawn because it matters too much and it comes from broader perspective, you'll begin to have some of those other kind of impulses. And when those impulses come, just relax and let your broader perspective have its way with the movement of your body. Esther remembers that in those early days, one day when they meditated, Jerry left the music that is always playing in the background of their life. It is rarely a time that they do not have some sort of music playing softly in the background or raucously in the background. And he had left something playing, and they'd sat to meditate, not even really noticing that it was playing, until Esther received her full connection, and then she began to feel her body responding to the rhythm of the music. She began to feel music in ways she had never felt it before. She began to recognize that part of her body was responding to the treble, and part of her body was responding to the bass, and part of her body was responding to the beat, and part of her body was responding to the melody. In other words, she could feel different. It was as if she was multifaceted, and each aspect of her body was responding to a different rhythm, a different part of the music. And she said to Jerry when she came out of meditation, that was an interesting experience. And then she began to notice that her arms began to move, and then she said, Abraham, because she had been conversing with us for some time through the typewriter, you must have been a musician or a composer or a director of some great orchestra in a past life, as I can feel that you are moving with the rhythm of the music. And we, in time, were able to explain to her that we were offering the impulse, and her movement meant that she was in enough of an allowing state that she was allowing us to dominate her being. Now, she was way past being freaked out about that by the time that happened. In other words, there are a lot of people that don't want some non-physical energy to dominate them. They talk in terms of possession. But we want you to understand that when you're tuned in with the energy of Source, that is a very, very wonderful thing. And you are that to some degree all day anyway. Do you think that it is your conscious mind that keeps your blood flowing? Is it your conscious mind that causes the metabolism within your food? In other words, you are thought in a physical body, and the thought that is dealing with your body is a supreme manager of vibration. You can trust it. Esther's found that she can lie in her bed and she can have people, kind people, from all over the nation are offering Jerry and Esther massages wherever they go, and they always decline because they get them from the inside out. In other words, they can put themselves in that position with the intention of having their body tended to, and source energy deals with their body on a cellular basis, you see. You never need to worry about the fact that you are connected. But anything you can do that makes you feel better is enhancing your receptivity of the openness of that connection. And that is the whole point of it, you see.